The first time I realized my life had flipped upside down, it wasn't in the alley. It wasn't even when my landlord grabbed my wrist. It was in the lobby of a downtown high-rise with marble floors and Christmas wreaths with strangers holding their phones up like I was a reality show, while Martin Kessler stood there yelling thief at me like he owned the word. And I remember thinking, this is how it happens. This is how they bury you in one sentence and walk away clean. Then a detective stepped out of the elevator, looked Martin dead in the face, and said, "Mr. Kessler, you can explain that to the judge," and just like that, the loudest man in the room went quiet. Yeah, that happened. And I'm telling you now because people love to talk about justice like it's automatic, like the truth just floats to the surface on its own. But if you've ever been the person nobody believes on sight, you already know the truth doesn't rise. You drag it up, kicking and screaming with your own hands. Let me back up to the night this started, because the reason I almost didn't make it is the same reason so many people don't. I was tired, I was alone, and I was the kind of woman people assume they can push around without consequences. It was late December in Chicago, the kind of cold that doesn't feel like weather. It feels personal, like the wind is holding a grudge. Snow had been falling all day, and by evening the sidewalks were slick and bright, under streetlights, pretty in a postcard way, brutal in real life. And I was coming off a double shift at Mercy Harbor Hospital, still wearing my light blue nurse uniform, because I'd run out of clean scrubs, my hair pulled back, my face dry from sanitizer and stress, and all I wanted was a hot shower and sleep. You know what I mean? That kind of tired where you're walking on autopilot and your brain is already in bed. I got to my building and I remember thinking, okay, just get upstairs, lock the door, heat up, ramen, don't talk to anyone, don't even look at your phone. And then I saw him, Martin Kessler. My landlord standing inside the hallway, like he'd been waiting, and he had that smile some men have when they think the rules are optional. That half-friendly, half-predatory grin that makes your stomach tighten before your brain catches up. He'd been nice since day one. Too nice, always leaning close, always making comments about my shifts, my legs, my smile, like he was collecting little pieces of me in his head. And I'd done what a lot of women do to survive. I'd kept it polite, kept it short, kept it moving, because you never know which kind of man you're dealing with until it's too late. That night, he blocked my path, and he started talking soft, like he was offering me a favor. "Maya, you work too hard. Let me take care of you." And I laughed that fake laugh we all have, the one that means please don't turn this into a problem. And I said, "Move, Martin." I'm tired, and he didn't move. He stepped closer. I tried to slide past him. He grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to look dramatic, just hard enough to say, "I can stop you if I want." And in that second, I felt my body do that thing where your heart spikes and your skin goes cold and your mind splits into two voices, one saying, "Stay calm," and the other saying, "Get out, get out, get out." I yanked my arm back, and I shoved him, and he stumbled, and for the first time his smile dropped, and his eyes went mean. "Don't make this hard," he said, like I was the inconvenience, like my boundaries were the problem. I ran. I didn't grab my coat. I didn't grab my shoes. I didn't grab my phone off the counter where I'd tossed it earlier when I came home between shifts. I ran down the back stairs and out into the alley because all I could think was distance, distance, distance. The snow slapped my bare feet like ice needles. My breath turned into smoke, and I kept going until my lungs hurt. Then I collapsed against a brick wall, shaking so violently I thought my teeth might crack. I remember staring at my hands and thinking, oh, I'm still in my uniform, I'm still wearing my hospital badge, I'm still the person who takes care of everybody else. And I'm barefoot in an alley like I'm nobody. That's the part that messes with you. Injustice doesn't just scare you, it humiliates you. It makes you feel small on purpose. I tried to steady my breathing and think of a plan. Call someone, call the police, call a friend. And then I realized my phone was upstairs, my keys were upstairs, my wallet was upstairs. Everything I needed to prove I existed was upstairs behind a door I wasn't going back through. And the cold started sinking into me deeper than my skin, like it was looking for a place to settle. Time got blurry. I don't know if it was 10 minutes or 40, but I know my lips went numb and my feet stopped feeling like feet. And that's when fear turns into something worse. That quiet, sleepy feeling that makes you want to give up. Then I heard footsteps, steady, purposeful, and I looked up and saw a man walking with a little girl. And for a second, my first thought wasn't help. It was danger, because when you're vulnerable, everyone feels like a threat. The man was tall, early 40s, clean-cut but tired, like he'd been carrying responsibilities in his shoulders for years, and the little girl was bundled in a red winter coat and a knit hat with a pom-pom clutching a teddy bear, like it was sacred, and she saw me and pointed no hesitation and said, "Papa, she's cold." Just like that. Not what's wrong with her, not you, not ignore her, just, she's cold. The man stopped so fast, she bumped into him, and he crouched down to her level and said, "Junie, stay right here, okay?" And then he walked toward me slowly, palms open, voice calm. "Miss, are you all right?" I tried to lie because pride does that, trauma does that. "I'm fine," I said, except my teeth were chattering so hard it sounded like a joke. He frowned, and he didn't look annoyed. He looked angry at the situation. "You're not fine," he said. "You're going to get hypothermia. Where's your coat? Your shoes?" And something in me cracked, because there's a point where your body knows you can't keep pretending, and I whispered, "Inside. My apartment. But I can't go back." He didn't press for details like he wanted a story. He asked one direct question. "Did he hurt you?" And I shook my head. "No." I got away, and then the sentence spilled out, the one Martin had planted like a bomb. He said if I report him, he'll make sure I never work as a nurse again. The man's jaw tightened, and behind him Junie hugged her teddy bear tighter and stared at me like she was trying to figure out how someone could be left like this. The man said, "I'm Ethan Cole. This is my daughter Junie. I live a few blocks from here. Please come with us." I must have looked skeptical because my whole life had taught me to be skeptical, so he pulled out his wallet and showed me his ID and a business card. Crisp, expensive, real. "You can look me up," he said. "My address is public record. I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm trying to help." Junie stepped a little closer and said with that blunt kid honesty that can punch straight through your defenses, "When you're cold, you need hot chocolate and blankets." My mom said that, then her face fell, and she added like a fact she hated. But my mom is in heaven now. And I don't know how to explain it, but grief has this way of making strangers feel familiar. Ethan took off his coat and wrapped it around my shoulders, then his scarf, and asked, "Can you walk?" I tried to stand, and my feet hit the snow, and I made this pathetic little sound, and before I could even protest, Ethan scooped me up like I weighed nothing. Junie announced proudly, "My papa's strong. He carries me all the time," and I laughed once through my tears, because it was so absurd. Me, a grown woman being carried through snow by a stranger, while a preschooler narrated it like a Disney movie. We got to his building, a place with a doorman and warm lights, and the doorman blinked when he saw me, but didn't ask questions, just opened the door like I mattered, and that alone almost made me cry harder. In the elevator, Ethan asked my name, and I said Maya Brooks, and he nodded like he was filing it away carefully, like it was important. His apartment was warm and quiet and expensive in that clean, calm way with a view that made the city look like it belonged to someone else, and he set me on the couch gently. And Junie ran off and came back with a fluffy unicorn blanket, draping it over me with the seriousness of a tiny doctor. "This is my warmest one," she said. An older woman came out of the kitchen. Mrs. Park and Ethan asked her to draw a warm bath and find me something comfortable. And Mrs. Park looked at me once and didn't judge me, didn't pity me, just said, "Come, dear," like I was family, and in the bathroom with steam and clean towels. I stared at my red eyes in the mirror and thought, this can't be real. This is too good. This is how people get tricked. But then I heard Junie in the hallway whispering to her teddy bear about helping the cold lady, and my chest tightened in a way I didn't expect. After the bath, after soup, after my shaking slowed down enough that I could hold a spoon, Ethan made a phone call to a lawyer in his office, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but sound carries in a quiet apartment, and I heard the lawyer say, "It's complicated. Kessler has ties with hospital administration. If she reports, it could become her word against his, and he'll retaliate." My stomach dropped, because that was exactly what Martin had promised, and I felt that familiar helplessness rise up, that feeling that the system isn't built for people like me. When Ethan came back, Junie had fallen asleep with her head in my lap, her teddy bear tucked under her chin, and I was stroking her hair without even realizing it. And Ethan looked at us like he was standing outside his own life. "My wife died 18 months ago," he said quietly. "Car accident. Junie was 2. I've been trying to do everything, and it's never enough." I said the truth because I didn't know what else to offer. "She adores you," and Ethan nodded like it hurt. Then he told me he had an idea, and you could tell he hated how it sounded, even as he said it. "Maya, you need a home, safety, time, and I need help with Junie. Not just childcare, but someone kind, steady, someone who can be a warm presence in her life while we heal." And I stared at him because in my world, people don't offer you a lifeline without asking what it costs. I asked why, and he looked at his sleeping daughter and said, "Because when my wife died, strangers showed up for me. Meals, help, just kindness. I promised myself I'd pay it forward if I ever could then." He looked at me and added, "And because I'm tired of men with connections thinking they can ruin good people." I didn't answer that night. I slept in a guest room that smelled like clean sheets and quiet money, and my brain replayed Martin's voice, his grip, his threat over and over, and then it replayed Junie's small voice saying, "She's cold," like the world was simple enough to fix. In the morning, I followed the smell of pancakes into the kitchen and found Ethan flipping pancakes like he was trying to hold the world together with a spatula, and Junie was on a stool, helping, which meant batter was everywhere, and she squealed when she saw me. Ms. Maya Ethan looked up, trying to hide the question in his eyes, and I took a breath and said, "If the offer still stands, I'll stay. For now," and his face softened into something real, not a CEO smile, a human one, and Junie hugged my legs like she'd been holding her breath all night. The weeks that followed were this strange mix of healing and tension, like walking on ice that keeps cracking but somehow holds. I helped with routines, lunches, bedtime stories, preschool drop-offs, and I learned Junie's teddy bear was Captain Buttons, and he required nightly reassurance, and Mrs. Park taught me how to make soup that tasted like safety, and Ethan tried so hard it almost made me angry, because I'd never seen a man carry grief with that much quiet devotion. He'd read the same book 3 times if Junie asked. He'd pack lunches at midnight, then sit alone in the dark kitchen after she fell asleep, like he didn't know what to do with the silence. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at a framed photo of his wife, Lila, and you could see the moment he remembered he couldn't outwork loss. And somewhere in the middle of all that, my phone got replaced, my shoes got replaced, my life started looking almost normal again, and that's when Martin reminded me he wasn't done. It started with an email from hospital HR asking me to clarify a medication count discrepancy, then a coworker looking at me sideways, then a rumor drifting through the break room like smoke, and then a call from an unknown number, and Martin's voice slid into my ear like poison. Maya, you really want to do this? My skin went cold. I hung up. He called again. I have friends at Mercy Harbor, he said. If you open your mouth, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the wall, thinking I should leave because that's what people like me do. We remove ourselves so we don't become a problem for anyone else. Ethan found me because of course he did, and when I told him Martin reached out, Ethan didn't panic. He didn't make a big speech, he just said, "Good." And when I stared at him, he added, "That means he's sloppy." And that was the twist in the middle of this story. I assumed Ethan's power was money that he'd just throw dollars at my problem and make it disappear. But Ethan's power was precision. He brought in his attorney, Donna Rios, a woman who spoke like a scalpel, and she told me we're going to make him prove who he is, and she meant legally cleanly, in a way the system couldn't ignore. She had me write down every detail, every date, every threat, and she brought in a private investigator who knew how to pull building footage the right way, and they documented everything. Not because they didn't believe me, but because belief isn't enough in a world that protects men like Martin. Donna arranged a recorded call through proper channels because Illinois has rules, and she wasn't about to hand Martin an escape route, and Martin took the bait like a man who'd never been told no. He referenced the hallway. He referenced my job. He bragged about controlling HR. Hearing his voice captured undeniable, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief mixed with rage because it proved I wasn't crazy. But the hardest part wasn't the legal plan. It was the emotional mess inside the apartment. One night I overheard Ethan on the phone saying, "Junie needs a mother figure. She needs consistency." And my insecurity twisted it into the worst version, and I stormed into the kitchen and blurted, "I'm not a replacement for your wife," and Ethan froze like I'd stabbed him. I kept going because fear makes you reckless. You don't get to hire a mother. And my voice cracked, and Ethan set his phone down slowly and said, "Maya, you think I don't know how this sounds? You think I don't hate that my daughter cries for someone I can't bring back? I'm not trying to replace Lila. I'm trying to keep Junie from growing up thinking love always disappears, and that shut me up because it was raw and ugly and real." Then Junie shuffled in half asleep, dragging Captain Buttons, and asked in that tiny broken voice, "Are you leaving?" And I swear that question hit me harder than Martin's threats. Because it wasn't about pride or reputation. It was about a kid who already lost one woman and was terrified of losing another. I knelt down, hugged her, and said, "Sweetheart, not tonight." And in that moment, I stopped seeing myself as a guest who could vanish at any time. I started seeing myself as someone whose presence mattered. The day everything blew up was a Tuesday, because life loves ruining your routine, and I walked into the lobby with Junie after running an errand, and there was Martin standing by the concierge desk like he belonged there, smiling, like he'd been practicing in the mirror. He looked at me and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "There she is." The thief and people turned and phones came out, and my heart started pounding so hard I felt it in my throat, and Junie squeezed my hand, and I almost did what I'd always done, shrink, apologize, disappear, because that's the reflex when you've been trained by unfairness. Martin pointed at my purse like it was evidence. "Ask her where she's been sleeping," he said. Ask her how she got into Ethan Cole's apartment. And that was the moment I realized he wasn't just trying to scare me, he was trying to poison me. He wanted everyone to see me as dirty, desperate, untrustworthy, so no one would listen when I spoke. Then Ethan stepped out of the elevator like he'd been summoned by my panic, and he didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't perform. He just looked at Martin and said, "Calm as ice. Say it again," and Martin puffed up. "Because bullies love an audience." "She's a liar," he snapped. "She stole from me. She's unstable." And Ethan nodded once and said, "Perfect. Keep talking." That's when Dana walked in behind him, and beside her was a detective in a plain coat with tired eyes. And the detective didn't rush, didn't posture, just asked Martin Kessler. Martin's smile faltered. "Yeah. Who are you?" The detective held up the warrant. "We're investigating allegations of coercion, harassment, and retaliation, along with evidence of witness intimidation." And Martin's face drained like someone pulled the plug. He tried to laugh, tried to act offended. "This is ridiculous," and Dana said. "Tell it to the judge," and Martin turned toward me with pure hatred and hissed, "You did this." And for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I looked him right in the eyes and said, "Martin, you did this," and it felt like stepping out of a cage I didn't realize I'd been living in. Security moved in. The detective stepped closer. Phones kept recording, but the story had flipped. This time, the powerful man didn't get to control the narrative, and as Martin was escorted out, Junie held my hand so tight it hurt, and I realized she was watching, learning, seeing what it looks like when a woman refuses to be erased. Now here's the part that's going to make people argue, and honestly, I want that because it matters. Ethan's offer saved my life. It also blurred lines people love to keep clean. Some people will say it was strange that a widowed CEO let a nurse he'd never met move into his home because his daughter needed stability. Some people will say I was wrong to accept because it made me look a certain way. Some will say he was naive. Others will say he was calculating. And I get it. The world trains us to see kindness as suspicious, especially when it crosses class lines, especially when it involves a woman in crisis. But let me ask you something. If you saw someone barefoot in the snow, shaking, terrified, would you worry more about what it looks like, or would you worry about keeping them alive? And if you've ever needed help and didn't get it because someone decided it wasn't their problem, you know exactly why I'm asking. The truth is, we've gotten so obsessed with being proper that we let people freeze alone, physically or emotionally, just to avoid being judged for stepping in. I still work as a nurse, and yeah, there were whispers, there were side eyes, there were people who acted like surviving meant I must have asked for it, because that's easier for them than admitting predators can look normal and powerful and respected. But Martin got louder than he realized. He got sloppy, he put his threats on record, and for once the system had enough to grab him by the collar. So here's my call to you. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were me. Would you have taken the offer and risked being judged? Or would you have walked back into the cold just to keep your pride intact? And if you were Ethan, would you have helped a stranger at the risk of your reputation? Or would you have told yourself it wasn't your problem? I want to hear your take on right and wrong, on fairness, on the way society treats women who speak up, and on whether kindness should come with rules at all. Drop your story if you've ever witnessed someone powerful try to silence someone smaller. And if you believe justice should be louder than connections, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that quiet doesn't mean weak.